I heard a man say one time he's counseled a lot of people, pastors that have been in extramarital affairs and things like that. And he said 100% the issue is never a lust issue. It was always a fulfillment issue.
Wow.
And shame comes in to kill fulfillment, right? Because it says you'll never reach your goal.
No matter what you've faced in your life, no matter what you've gone through, the regrets you may have for missed opportunities, those don't disqualify you. Rather, they uniquely qualify you. They uniquely qualify you because you can impart wisdom. You can impart lessons learned. You can speak into the lives of those following behind. We need you. The world needs you to step up and have vision again. Use your imagination. What can my life look like? Welcome to Next Third, Best Third. Hey, welcome back to Next Third, Best Third. I'm founder and host David Fenwick, and this morning I get to be with one of my favorite humans, Ron Adkins. Ron, thanks for being here.
Honored to be here, brother.
Yeah, just love it. Love sitting together with you and pontificating.
Yeah.
Right? So, Ron, for those of you who don't know him, on a previous podcast, I'd encourage you to go back to it and hear his story. It's a phenomenal story, how he was sentenced to basically 500 years in prison, was considered the most violent inmate in Texas prison. And look at him now, he's this big teddy bear, and he's free, and he's got a great story, a great testimony. But today, what I wanted to do today, Ron, is, with Next Third, Best Third, there's areas of decay that all men face. And one of the 5 areas of decay is what I call spiritual. And don't get turned off by the word spiritual. When we talk about spiritual, it's these things that could be haunting a man, right? They're strongholds, things like regret, disappointment, a sense of failure, all these kind of things. But today I want to talk about shame, right? Okay. I want to talk about shame. Shame is, it affects us in so many ways, right? I mean, when a man walking around with shame, he tends to isolate.
For sure.
And it pours over into every aspect of our life. We talk about relationships, and we talk about our emotional health, and even our mental, our cognitive health. Shame is just this thing that latches on. So let's dive into that.
Well, I think when you talk about shame, you really have to kind of define what it is, so that men can identify it. And like we were talking a little bit earlier, shame is not necessarily what you've done, but what you haven't done, right? And it's in your passivity that the biggest shame, because men feel like they know a lot of times what they're supposed to be doing, but then they don't do it.
Yeah.
And that in their passivity, and then shame comes.
So
because
shame kind of attacks your masculinity.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. I mean, we all wrestle with some shame about what we've done wrong.
Sure, yeah.
And
more of that's regret than shame.
Yeah, I think so. But shame is about passivity. That's cool. I didn't really think about that too much.
Yeah, and so because that's what happened to Adam in the garden. He was passive in the face of the serpent, and allowed the conversation with Eve to even take place.
Right.
When he should have been stopping it from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And then he sat and listened to lies about God that he knew weren't true.
Right.
And it opened the door for them to fall.
Right. Yeah, I heard it said, spoke with a friend of mine recently, and said that shame is connected intimately with pride.
Yeah.
Right. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's a powerful word right there, shame and pride. You don't all the time think about it, but I think the key to that is, when I told you humility is not thinking less of yourself. Humility is thinking of yourself less. So if you're in shame, it's all about you.
Yeah.
You're thinking about you. You're thinking about, what did I do wrong? What did I not do? And this, I'm a failure. I'm less. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, but that's not, and it becomes a false humility, and pride raises his head in that area.
Right.
And says, I'm the worst.
Well, we've talked about that, you and I, many times, about how pride is like this double-sided coin.
Yeah.
On one side, it's, hey, I'm better than everybody,
There's an arrogance to it.
right.
Yeah.
But I've found most guys actually have the flip side of pride, saying, I'm less than I should be, or I'm a failure, or I'm the worst of the worst. Nobody has done as bad as me. I know it myself. I've wrestled with that off and on for years.
Yeah, I like what Bill Johnson says that, true humility is surrendering and believing what God says about you.
Yeah.
And if that's true, then not believing what God says about you is pride.
Yeah. It's very narcissistic.
Not surrendering to his words over you. Because he's not speaking shame over you.
No, it's all acceptance.
Yes,
it's all favor, right?
Righteousness.
Right.
He's speaking righteousness over you.
Yeah.
And if, like it says in Romans 4, if you hear that declaration of righteousness, then true wholeness comes to you.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I know that if you think about it and you correlate shame and pride together, what happens is you reach this place where you're going, man, I am so bad. I've done so bad, or I've failed so much in a passive way.
Right.
I know what I should be doing and I'm not. And all of a sudden you get to that place where you're saying, I can't expose this to anybody.
Right.
I can't be honest with anybody. And so you start to hide,
And isolate.
Isolate is a killer, especially for men. That's a big part of my message. And you and I talk about it all the time, is men will isolate, and they'll isolate out of pride.
That's right.
They don't want to be exposed.
It's Proverbs 18.
Yeah.
A man that isolates himself rages against his own soul.
Wow. Yeah.
So, because we're built for community, we're built for connection and relationship.
Right.
Because we're made in the image of God, and he's always been in relationship, Father, Son, and Spirit, in relationship. And so we're built that way.
Yeah.
And if we isolate ourselves, I know about isolation because I spent 13 years in solitary confinement. So
that's amazing.
It's almost a familiar place for me to fall back into,
Yeah.
And there's a hopelessness there.
Yeah.
That wants to take over you, drag you down to even suicidal, thoughts.
When I first met you and heard your story that you spent 13 years in isolation, right, in confinement, and it was a 5x8 cell or something like that.
Right.
I still can't believe you fit in that 5x8 cell. As big as you are, people don't realize. He looks big. I'm a good-sized man. He's a giant, and but it's true. I got thinking about that. Is how many of us live in an isolation cell of our own making?
Right. We take a step back when things get hard and we don't, exactly know what to do, or maybe we feel inadequate to the situation. We'll step back.
Right.
Instead of confronting that fear, and letting perfect love come in and cast that fear out. We just wall it off.
Right.
And we say, I'm just going to wash my hands of it, or I'm going to step back from it and isolate.
Right.
Not connect, not engage.
And it's interesting because I heard a man say this about we put on a facade, right? And we put on this. So it's not isolating always about me like retreating into my house or into a private room and being alone. That's depression, really. You know? But it's more putting on a facade and not letting anybody see the reality. And so this facade is pride, right? I don't want to let anybody know that behind the facade, what he was saying is a shame, and shame is gnarly, and it's knives, and it's digging in, and it's tearing you apart right from the inside. But on the outside, you put this facade saying, "No, I'm good.
Right.
I'm good."
Right. And as long as that wall is up, nothing can come through it.
Right.
You need a God who walks through walls,
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
to come in and bring that healing to that place.
So
but he wants you to open up. He
right.
wants you to expose who you really are, right? And not be living as the fake you, because those life abundantly, and all the blessings that God has for us as men, and the responsibility and the the meaning in our lives that comes from
Yeah.
accepting that responsibility and being that leader in our families, that can't come if it's the fake you.
No. But we've been sold, in a Western culture,
Yeah.
in particular, we've been sold a false masculinity,
Definitely.
right?
John Wayne masculinity.
Right,
yeah.
right. These, or Claude Van Damme, all these independent, Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Sure, yeah.
and all this kind of stuff, where we've got this idea that a man has to be
The alpha male.
right.
Yeah.
And that's not masculinity at all.
No.
True masculinity, I've learned, is to have the courage to be authentic,
Yep.
the courage to be vulnerable, right? To be real with people. But that takes intention, right? I mean, you and I have developed an amazing relationship. We talk about everything, right, with each other. But, that has been intentional on our part,
Yeah.
I mean, it's taken courage for me to share some of the things with you that I've had to share, and
Me
vice
too.
versa, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But that's really masculinity.
It is. And I mean, like we talked about last night, sometimes you can't have that with everybody.
No,
That's
no.
true.
Right.
But there is a group of men that God has set up, like a band of brothers, or
Right.
I mean, that's the whole Dragon Slayer concept that we've been working on with Danny. Is just how can we be in covenant with each other and have this group of men that we can be vulnerable with,
Right.
and that will not try to use that to tear us down.
Right.
Because that's a lot of the reason, is the fear of, if I say this openly, then it's going to be used against
That's
me
right. It's
tear
like
me
I'm
down.
giving you-
in our cancel culture that's going on.
Right.
That's what happens.
That's right. It's like I'm giving you this, and you're
Yeah.
going to turn around and use it against me.
Right.
And by the way, for his reference to Danny and Dragon Slayers, for those of you who don't know, Danny Silk is an amazing man. He's he's awesome, and he has written a book called The Way of the Dragon Slayer, and he has created Dragon Slayer groups of men who come together and are authentic and they're real. And
It's about the 7 dragons that men face: God, themselves, women, machines, nature. It's all in there.
right. So it's so good. So I encourage you, look up Danny Silk and Dragon Slayers, and his book is out now, and it's
Podcast too.
Yeah, and he's got the podcast, and he's hopefully going to be a guest here soon. So, but anyways, back to that whole thing about being afraid of being exposed,
Yeah.
and having it turned against you. You and I are very much the same, where we're encouraging men to seek out these tribes, right? These groups of guys who we can be real with, and I've never liked the idea that it's some sort of an accountability group saying, "Hey, I'm struggling with porn, and I'm struggling with this," but really more of calling out.
That's more like AA or something.
Right,
Yeah.
and nothing wrong with that for its purpose. But what I'm talking about, what we are trying to live, is calling out the true identity, calling out the gold in you,
Right.
Stirring you up to imagine again and dream again, and what could my life be like, right?
Right.
Because so much of shame tied to pride is, well, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to. I'm not living my best life, and I don't want people to know that. Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think a lot of it too is the regret sets in and says, well, since that's the situation, then I have no more recourse. I have no more, my dreams are dead or whatever.
Right.
Or I can't rise above this situation and say, even though that's what I did, then that's not who I really am.
Right.
It might have been what I did in a moment. I might have messed that up.
Yeah.
But that's not who I really am.
Right. And when shame and pride are together like that, right?
That locks you in and gets you
Absolutely.
stuck.
Right. And when we think about it, there's the scripture says that pride comes before the fall.
Yeah.
And so we have guys who might be struggling with reoccurring sin, or they might have failure, they might have all this regret. They're prideful about it, so they're hiding, they put on the facade, and they're dooming themselves to fall back into the same behavior.
Right.
Because pride comes before the fall.
I heard a man say one time, he's counseled a lot of people, pastors that have been in extramarital affairs and things like that. And he said, 100% the issue is never a lust issue. It was always a fulfillment issue.
Wow.
And shame comes in to kill fulfillment, right? Because it says you'll never reach your goal.
Yeah.
Because you're less.
You're less. You've had all this opportunity and you still haven't accomplished it. So there's no hope for you.
Right. The hopelessness comes in and the shame, and it locks you into that position of where you can't see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And that's not the truth.
No.
Because with God, all things are possible.
So true. So true. But so often, where do you go for that, right? I mean, we talk so much, with Next Third, Best Third about, inspiring men and giving them a vision, but you can't, we're talking about it right now, but you cannot do this alone.
No, you had to, I believe you really have to have, I think that's been the problem in the church, because we've taken a pastor and put him up on a pedestal and said, okay, we're all here to watch him burn.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But the early church, everybody had a flame of fire. Everybody was burning.
Yeah.
Right. And they weren't focused on this one man on this pedestal that said, well, we're all living vicariously through him.
Right.
And that's been the model.
Oh yeah. And even
so
outside of the church, right?
Men have never been able to break out of that, and because it's only in action, I think, that you can break out of that, because men are action people.
Right.
We're doers.
Right. And being vulnerable is not passive. It's
Right.
taking action.
Right.
It's being intentional.
Right.
As you were saying that how in the church you can put a pastor or this charismatic personality up there. I think even people who aren't religious and they don't attend any kind of church, they do the same thing. But so often in our culture, we do it with what? We do it with
Celebrities.
and sports heroes. It always, nothing wrong with this. I'm a sports fan.
We live vicariously through them.
Exactly. This is my team and we're going to the Super Bowl and we're this. And it's like going, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, you're sitting on your couch.
That's right. You have a jersey on and you're going nowhere, but you're living vicariously. And what it does, I think, is it medicates the shame. It medicates that sense that I have not accomplished something.
I think it does that. Complacency does that.
Yeah.
Because, that's the story of Abraham. He was living in his father's tent, up in age. Been sitting there eating grapes, getting fanned by the servants, just chilling.
Yeah.
And God called him out on a great adventure to go into a land that was wild and, and he went.
Right.
And he went on this grand adventure and became the father of nations,
That's right.
And he's all of our father.
And it's so cool in that story because God, he invites him to go where? To a land that you do not know.
Yeah.
A great
the
adventure.
Unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we're trying to do. We're trying to do with Next Third, Best Third, and now you and I are trying to do it with some of the things we're planning with men's groups and men's conferences. Is we're trying to inspire men and to say, hey, come with us on a great adventure.
Pick up your cross.
Come on.
Follow us. Let's go on this adventure. Yeah, because shame and fear and complacency, that's what holds you back from that.
Right.
Because the fear says, oh, that's the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen on the other
Right.
side of this. I don't know how. God gave me this word the other day. I'm still trying to work it out, but he said the opposite of faith is not doubt.
No.
It's certainty.
Wow. That's so good.
Because if you're certain, then it doesn't take faith.
There's no adventure in certainty.
No.
None whatsoever.
But what are we all stuck in? We want security and
Right.
certainty, and we want everything to, we want to know our routine's going to be the same.
Right.
And we're going to go to this job for 30 years and we're going to retire.
There's even a certainty in our history of failure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Why don't we step out? It's because I have a certainty that I've failed every time in the past.
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
And yet the adventure, the call to dream, to step out is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that passivity comes in, and that shame and pride are all woven together, right? It's like, no, I've got a history that I've never scaled that mountain before.
Right.
I've always gone this far and no further.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's this invitation to go to a land you've never been to.
Right.
Right.
Right. And the only way into that land is through faith, because
Right.
you have to step out into nothing.
Right.
Like Peter, when he stepped off the boat, there was no certainty that he was going to be able to walk on water because nobody had ever walked on water before.
Absolutely. And what's interesting to me too, Ron, is that it's not a stepping out in a boldness, right? But it's stepping out in a surrender.
Yeah. Encourage.
Courage
Even in
and
the
surrender
fear,
go
with the
together,
fear.
right?
Yeah.
Right? To take that step and say, okay, I've failed I'm certain that I'm going to fail, but I'm going to step. You know?
Peter did a lot of failing.
Yeah. Well, and he did step out in the water.
He did, though.
You know?
That's right. He was the only one.
Yeah. Yeah. He stepped into a lot. But,
He did. He stepped in a lot.
and, I think for me, as we're saying that, is one of the areas where I struggle with shame and pride is I have always been one person who I've taken a lot of chances. Mm-hmm. I've lost more money than I could ever explain by taking chances. I've started businesses. I've gone, I've done different things just randomly. Mm-hmm. Now, most of them God didn't tell me to do. I told myself I can't. But because I have that, I do have this sense of man, I've failed so much.
Yeah.
Do I dare?
And see, I have the exact opposite because, one of the ungodly beliefs I had that stuck with me forever is mistakes are catastrophic because, my mistake at 17 years old landed me in prison for life, 500 years or whatever. And so I'm a risk avoider.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Because of that, because I see mistakes as always catastrophic.
Yeah.
But as well as I do, you have to make mistakes. That's the only way to learn.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So,
That's right.
so I'm exact. My certainty is, the mistake's going to be bad, going to be catastrophic. So don't make it.
Yeah. I have a saying that I share all the time.
But they're both rooted in shame.
Oh, in pride.
Yeah, and pride.
In pride, right?
Yeah.
But
because that's not what God's saying.
No. And it's interesting. Like I can look at you and believe totally that you're going to rock the world, right? Mm. And then yet for me, what do? I don't believe that, you know? And it's because of my own pride. Mm-hmm. I recognize that now. I was going to share. I've got this saying that I repeat over and over and over. Your failures, your regrets, the mistakes you've made, your past pain and brokenness does not disqualify you.
No.
It uniquely qualifies you.
Wow, yeah.
Right?
That's so good.
Yeah, because you're able to, not just for your own life, but share, and which is a big part of intentionality that we have for Next Third Best Third is we want to pour into other men, right? And you can only pour into other men out of your experiences in some of your brokenness and things like that, because you're qualified then. Our friend Richard Nash has a saying. Good. He goes, he never wants to hire anybody or bring people in close if they don't smell like smoke.
Yeah, I like
it's
that.
Such a great line.
Yeah, I like that.
You've got to go through the fire.
I think that's what Christ meant when he was talking to Peter, and he said, Peter, Satan has desired to sift you like wheat.
Yeah.
But I've prayed for you, right? And in my situation, I'd be like, no, Jesus, so I want you to stop him.
That's right.
I want you to stop him. Don't let him sift me like wheat.
That's right.
Don't just pray for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
He said, I pray that your faith doesn't fail.
Right.
In this process.
Not that you won't go through the sifting.
So, yeah. And the reason he said this was, he said, so that when you come through, you'll be able to reach back and strengthen your brothers.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
And that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's what Peter did ultimately.
Yeah.
He went through everything he went through, and he failed, and he abandoned, he betrayed the Lord, whatever, all the stuff he did, right?
So you kind of
denied him. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
So we kind of take this and circle back to the beginning about shame and pride. How do you defeat shame? Right. I think part of it is right there where you have this reality that don't be ashamed because what you've gone through or even what you have not done uniquely qualifies you as you walk through it by faith to reach back and strengthen other men.
Right. Don't believe the lie from the enemy that disqualifies you.
No, it uniquely qualifies you. I
Yeah.
think that's I love that phrase anyways,
I do
because
too.
that statement, because it's become kind of like a mantra for me.
Yeah.
You know, I have so many reasons to be disqualified that it actually has qualified me to touch more people.
Exactly.
Because I can speak into guys' lives from all over, right? You can speak into men's lives through your testimony, your story, that, I mean, it's like going, you don't know what it's like to really be isolated. You do, but I don't.
I think it's what Revelation talks about, where they defeated the enemy by the word of their testimony and the blood of the Lamb.
Yeah.
Because the testimony it's the things you've been through,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not meant to bring hopelessness or to bring fear on you. It's meant to build you up.
Right. Right.
And say, because God says, wherever your foot treads, I've given you that ground.
Mm-hmm.
He told me that one time about hopelessness. Because I lived in hopelessness for so many years in prison, that he's given me that ground. I've walked through that. My foot's tread that ground.
Good.
And now I own it.
That's good.
I don't have to be affected by it. I own it. And then that's why when I go back into prisons, God releases hope through my testimony.
Right.
Because hopelessness doesn't have any power anymore when that testimony is brought to life.
So if you're a man listening and you've gone through financial struggles, right? You've gone through personal relationship struggles, maybe you've been divorced, maybe, all these kind of things. With that perspective, you've come through it. So you own that now. You've got authority over that. You can speak into that, right?
Exactly.
I know that some of the things that have occurred in my life, I can speak into men whose hearts have been devastated.
Sure.
I can do that because I own that. Right?
Yeah.
I can speak into men's lives.
You've trod that ground.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and come through it.
Yeah.
I've shared this before, and I think it really ties to guys who are struggling with shame. Is if you've gone through some things, your life, if you get your eyes off of yourself, right? That's breaking out of the pride.
Yeah.
Get your eyes off of yourself.
Yeah.
And get your eyes, we talk as Christians, get our eyes on the Lord, but if you're not a believer, just get your eyes on other people and causes bigger than yourself. If you do that, then you kind of reach this point where your life may never be the same.
That's right.
But it could be better. That's hope.
Yeah.
My life will never be the same after what I went through 6 years ago, but God is making it better.
Yeah. And I've heard Jordan Peterson say this a lot of times. He says, never compare yourself to other people. Just compare yourself to who you were yesterday.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. And then, build on that. And then over time, you're going to be a lot better person than you were.
Yeah. And I think, too, going back to your story of Abraham and mentioning Abraham, is we've got to be careful not to get too long of a future vision, right? Because I know for myself, if I go too far out, like where could this lead, all that kind of what if, I'll never step into it. But I can step into today.
Yeah.
I can take that step Abraham did of stepping out.
I always say the only thing Abraham had to do to fulfill the promise was keep chasing Sarah around the tent.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, I know this, and we can wrap up here, but if you're struggling, if anybody's out there struggling with shame, I think recognizing that it's because you're afraid so often to be really known.
Yeah.
And we need to be intentional about building relationships and being real and vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's the most courageous thing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most masculine thing you can do, is to be vulnerable, to be intentional, and to
open up and let people see the real you.
That's right. Now, again, we go back, you have to use wisdom.
Yeah.
It can't be everybody. You have to earn, you have to kind of earn each other's ear a little bit, spend that time. And, you don't want to overdo it, jump into it too soon, because then it could be used against you.
Yeah.
But we do need to be vulnerable, right? So good. Well, this has been fun.
Yeah.
I'm looking
Amazing.
forward. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next time.
Yeah.
And obviously, Ron and I are going to be doing a lot of this. But so thank you so much. If you could do me a favor, if you could click like and subscribe, that'll do us a huge favor of impacting men with a message of hope, trying to inspire men to make the next third the best, very best third, right? And another thing is share these podcasts with your friends. Be intentional. Invest in others as you invest in yourself. That'll do it. Thank you.